China has become the world's largest auto exporter.
$9,200 equivalent U.S. dollars.
Chinese automakers are going to come here eventually, and they're going to do it regardless of if there's a tariff or not.
40 years ago or so, the Chinese auto industry barely existed. Today, the country makes enough cars to supply half the world.
I call it the Great Godzilla. The world has never seen an auto industry of this size, scale. This is a giant machine just getting ramped up.
And it has its eyes on the United States, which, thanks to China's rise, is for sale in the U.S. at the moment, although a few other ones, like Volvo, Polestar, and Lotus, are Chinese-owned. But insiders say it's only a matter of time. The country has been ramping up exports to offload overcapacity. Surveys indicate a large share of shoppers, especially younger ones, would be happy to buy a Chinese.
The U.S. auto industry is facing a crisis unlike anything seen before. It's not about fuel prices, labor strikes, or even supply chain delays. This time, the problem is something far smaller, but also more crucial: microchips. These tiny components essential for everything from electric vehicles to self-driving technology are now at the center of a global tech war between the U.S. and China. And here's where things take a shocking turn. This isn't just a temporary shortage. This is the beginning of a long-term battle that could permanently change the way cars are made, who controls the market, and how much consumers will have.
Apple, Meta, Microsoft, Nvidia, Tesla. Together, these tech giants are called the Magnificent Seven. And why are they called magnificent? Not because of their massive valuations or their investments in artificial intelligence. They are called magnificent because of their dominance in the stock market. These 7 stocks account for over 1/3 of the total value of S&P 500. S&P 500 is an index that tracks the top 500 companies in America, and these 7 companies that I just mentioned rule it. They shape the fortunes of the market, and when they stumble, the market trembles. We saw that yesterday. The stock markets were bleeding. $1 trillion were wiped off in a single day, all thanks to a Chinese AI company called DeepSeek. We've been telling you about it on this show. DeepSeek recently unveiled its AI models, its AI chatbots. And they're making waves the world over, giving American AI giants like ChatGPT and Gemini a run for their money. The Chinese models are cost-effective, just a few $1 million in investments. They were also trained on less advanced chips, yet they're as good as their Western counterparts, and this has left the markets in a frenzy. If you looked at the Magnificent Seven yesterday, you could have mistaken them for a Chinese flag. That's how red they were. The biggest loser? Star chipmaker Nvidia. It had its worst day since the year 2020. Nvidia shares plunged 17% in yesterday's trade. It wiped out $600 billion in market value, $600 billion in just one day. It's the biggest fall in U.S. stock market history. The other tech titans weren't spared either. Alphabet shed $100 billion. Microsoft lost $7 billion. All in all, it was manic Monday for America's tech giants. And the losses spilled over. The world's richest collectively lost $108 billion. Leading this rout was Jensen Huang, the CEO of Nvidia. His fortune took a $20 billion
to pay. For decades, U.S. automakers relied on a steady flow of semiconductors from Asia. Factories in Taiwan, South Korea, and China provided the critical chips needed to power everything from infotainment systems to fuel efficiency monitors. But all of that changed when geopolitical tensions escalated. The U.S. government, citing national security concerns, began imposing strict restrictions on China's access to high-end semiconductor technology. At first, these policies seemed targeted at artificial intelligence and military application. But what happened next took everyone by surprise. The ripple effects hit the automotive sector, causing production slowdowns, rising costs, and a supply chain crisis that is still unfolding.
So we begin with the breaking news. A fresh trade war between the US and China has just kicked off. An hour and a half ago, the US went ahead with its promise of 10% tariffs on all Chinese goods headed to the US. China quickly responded and announced it's to do the same in a tit-for-tat spat that could impact the global economy. China's finance ministry is saying the measures against US goods would take effect next Monday. An extra 10% tax will be added to goods including crude oil and agricultural machinery. Imports of coal and liquefied natural gas will be hit with 15% tariffs. It's also saying it's filing a complaint with the World Trade Organization over the action from the US.
China, refusing to back down, responded with its own strategy. The country launched an aggressive expansion of its domestic semiconductor industry, accelerating its Made in China 2025 initiative. This program, designed to make China self-sufficient in high-tech manufacturing, aims to reduce reliance on U.S. chip makers altogether. Billions of dollars are now being poured into new semiconductor plants, and China is cutting trade deals with alternative suppliers while restricting exports to certain Western nations.
Americans may soon feel the effects of President Trump's executive actions, and they could impact the type of car people choose to drive. One of the orders will eliminate what Trump calls an electric vehicle mandate and could also end subsidies for EVs. In his inaugural address on Monday, the president said he expects his moves on energy to bring down costs.
The inflation crisis was caused by massive overspending and escalating energy prices, and that is why today I will also declare a national energy emergency. We will drill, baby, drill.
For more, let's bring in Joanne Muller. She's transportation correspondent at Axios. Thank you so much for being here. So what does Trump mean when he says there's an EV mandate?
Well, there's not really an EV mandate, but the regulations are written in such a way, they're strict enough that companies can't comply with them without making more EVs. And so, you know, President Biden had a goal of 50% EVs by 2030, and President Trump has said, nope, we're not doing that. He revoked that order. And he also halted the spending of money for electric vehicle chargers, for a national network of chargers. So those are the two things he's done so far. But he is clearly setting the tone that things are going to be different now.
And here's where things take an even wilder turn. The restrictions didn't just hurt China, they also backfired on U.S. automakers. Suddenly, companies like Ford, GM, and Tesla found themselves struggling to secure the chips they needed. The ban on exporting advanced chip technology to China meant that American manufacturers could no longer rely on the supply chains they had built over the last 2 decades. The result? Delayed vehicle launches, soaring costs, and mounting frustration in the auto industry.
Analysts describe Beijing's response as restrained.
They're not seemingly trying to escalate. They're not getting into a war of words, not, saying Donald Trump's, this, that, or calling him names or anything like that. So they're just waiting and watching. I think they came to the realization you cannot control Donald Trump. You can just simply prepare.
How to best prepare China and its economy for the future is just one of the topics being discussed at the 2 sessions summits. The first session, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, opened on Tuesday, gathering 2,000 grassroots representatives in Beijing's Great Hall of the People.
The delegates attending this conference come from all walks of life. They include entrepreneurs, entertainers, teachers, and village leaders. Their job is to provide feedback to the government about how well policies are working on the ground and to propose changes to existing laws.
But the crisis goes even deeper. The shortage of semiconductors isn't just affecting production numbers, it's fundamentally changing the way automakers do business. With fewer chips available, companies have been forced to make tough decisions. Some have prioritized high-end models with better profit margins, while others have scaled back on features to reduce chip dependency. That's why many new vehicles hitting the market today are missing standard features like digital dashboards, automated parking systems, and advanced driver assistance tools. Meanwhile, smaller suppliers, companies that produce critical electronic components for automakers, are on the brink of collapse. The rising cost of sourcing alternative semiconductors has made it nearly impossible for them to stay afloat. Some are shutting down entirely, while others are being forced to merge with larger firms just to survive.
Account for over 1/3 of the total value of S&P 500. S&P 500 is an index that tracks the top 500 companies in America, and these 7 companies that I just mentioned rule it. They shape the fortunes of the market, and when they stumble, the market trembles. We saw that yesterday. The stock markets were bleeding. $1 trillion were wiped off in a single day, all thanks to a Chinese AI company called DeepSeek. We've been telling you about it on this show. DeepSeek recently unveiled its AI models, its AI chatbots. And they're making waves the world over, giving American AI giants like ChatGPT and Gemini a run for their money.
And if you think the worst is over, think again. The U.S. government introduced the CHIPS Act to boost domestic semiconductor production. But here's the problem. Building a semiconductor factory isn't like opening a new assembly line. It takes years, billions of dollars, and highly specialized technology. That means immediate relief isn't coming anytime soon. Automakers are now scrambling to invest in domestic chip production while also looking for alternative suppliers in Mexico, India, and Vietnam.
That Elon Musk's Tesla could lose billions of dollars in clean air credits because of Trump's environmental policy. Does that mean electric cars will get more expensive? And sort of on the political spectrum here, what does that mean for Trump and Musk's relationship?
Well, Tesla CEO Elon Musk has said, I don't need EV tax credits to sell my cars. And that's true. But what I'm talking about here are for all the other companies that cannot comply with the law, they have to buy credits, emissions credits from Tesla, who complies with every single car that they build. And so Tesla brings in billions of dollars that they make from other automakers.
And just when you thought things couldn't get more complicated, rising energy costs have made the situation even worse. The production of electric vehicles and their battery components requires massive amounts of electricity and raw materials. But with global energy prices climbing, the cost of manufacturing these vehicles has skyrocketed. That cost inevitably gets passed down to consumers, making EVs even more expensive at a time when governments are pushing for widespread adoption.
Other automakers just for trading credits. And if the regulations become more relaxed, the pressure is off those other car makers. They don't have to buy as many credits from Tesla. So that is a source of revenue for Tesla that represents about 40% of their profit, frankly, in last quarter.
This is where things start to spiral out of control. Automakers, already facing chip shortages, now have to deal with the reality that energy prices are making their products even more unaffordable. Some companies are already scaling back their EV production targets, citing unsustainable costs. And while governments continue to push for net zero emissions and the rapid transition to electric vehicles, the industry is facing the harsh reality that the infrastructure simply isn't ready.
Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, his fortune took a $20 billion hit. You'd think he wouldn't be a fan of DeepSeek, but surprisingly, Huang had a different take. He called it, and I'm quoting, an excellent advancement. And it's easy to see why. DeepSeek's AI models were trained using NVIDIA chips. They weren't the latest and the greatest, but they were still NVIDIA chips. And here's the twist. A cheaper AI model means more AI demand.
Yeah, I think the worry is that they, in theory, were able to do this without NVIDIA's latest chips, as well as the model. It's a strong model. But the reality is that it doesn't change the position of U.S. tech, NVIDIA, Microsoft, and others relative to AI revolution. And I do believe it's a huge overreaction that we're seeing in stocks on this DeepSeek sell-off.
As this crisis unfolds, automakers are being forced to rethink their supply chains entirely. The days of relying solely on Asian chip manufacturers are coming to an end. Companies are now working to establish semiconductor production in new regions, creating partnerships with countries that offer more supply chain stability. But that process takes time, and until then, the industry will remain in limbo.
Oh, yes, and reflecting very much upon the nature of our relationship with our largest trading partner. I mean, it's important to understand that Canada exports something north of 75% of our goods and services to our neighbor to the south. But the recent events with Mr. Trump musing about 51st states, threatening tariffs, already imposing tariffs on steel and aluminum, it's caused a lot of self-reflection in Canada about how much this nation relies on exports to the United States for a variety of different ways, and it caused a lot of self-reflection within the country about trading within Canada, because oddly enough, there are substantial trade barriers between and among provinces as well. So it's been an issue that's gone on for decades, and suddenly is without much improvement, and suddenly a lot of discussion about how to improve those as well. Joining the EU. Well, I can't say that it's anywhere top of the agenda right now, but we live in odd times.
For consumers, the impact is already being felt. New car prices have surged, waiting times for vehicle deliveries have grown longer, and even the used car market has seen a dramatic price increase due to the limited supply of new vehicles. For those looking to buy a budget-friendly car, the options are shrinking fast.
Well, I like Elon, but, the car, and there's a place for electric cars, but you have to have other choices, too. I love Elon Musk. Do we love him? I love him. And I'm constantly talking about electric cars, but I don't mean I'm totally for them, but whatever the market says, and if it's 10% of the market, 12%, 7%, 20%, whatever it is. They cost too much. They're all made in China. Other than that, they're fantastic. And I'm for electric cars. I have to be, because Elon endorsed me very strongly, Elon. So I have no choice. But he knows. I am for him. I'm for him for a small slices.
But here's where things take an even more concerning turn. This isn't just a problem for the auto industry. The semiconductor crisis is part of a much larger geopolitical battle, one that will shape the future of global trade, technology, and economic power. The U.S. and China are no longer just competing for market dominance. They are fighting for control over the supply chains that power the modern world. With China pouring billions into its semiconductor industry and the U.S. scrambling to rebuild its own, the next few years will determine who comes out on top. If China succeeds in achieving full self-sufficiency in semiconductor production, it could gain a level of technological independence that threatens U.S. economic influence. On the other hand, if the U.S. can successfully build its own chip manufacturing base, it could regain control over a crucial part of the global tech industry.
So you have written that Elon Musk's Tesla could lose billions of dollars in clean air credits because of Trump's environmental policy. Does that mean electric cars will get more expensive? And sort of on the political spectrum here, what does that mean for Trump and Musk's relationship?
Well, Tesla CEO Elon Musk has said, I don't need EV tax credits to sell my cars. And that's true. But what I'm talking about here are for all the other companies that cannot comply with the law, they have to buy credits, emissions credits from Tesla, who complies with every single car that they built. And so Tesla brings in billions of dollars that they make from other automakers just for trading credits. And if the regulations become more relaxed, the pressure is off those other car makers. They don't have to buy as many credits from Tesla. So that is a source of revenue for Tesla that represents about 40% of their profit, frankly, in last quarter.
But here's the reality. Neither side is backing down. The restrictions, counter-restrictions, and retaliatory trade policies will only continue, ensuring that this battle is far from over. And while governments play this high-stakes game, industries like automotive, consumer electronics, and even artificial intelligence will have to navigate an increasingly unpredictable landscape. So what happens next? Can automakers adapt quickly enough to stabilize production? Will the U.S. and China find a way to de-escalate this economic war? Or are we looking at years of continued supply chain chaos? And most importantly, how much longer will consumers have to pay the price for this ongoing battle? What do you think about this new development? Kindly share with us in the comments. Also, like and subscribe for more videos from us.